What's going on, everybody? We are live, baby. How we doing, Smitty?
I'm good, brother. I appreciate you having me on this week for your. This is becoming like a weekly thing now. This recap Q&A thing on Fridays, but yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate you having me on, and can't wait to talk some ball.
yeah. Want to chop it up? I'm going out of town next week, so I'm gonna be kind of a little bit off the grid. So I want to jump on here and talk some ball, man. It's been an interesting week. I've been like super busy, just trying to like get content out, not just this week, but like try to pre-record some stuff for next week. But been an interesting week for the Steelers. Like busy, but not super. Like I wouldn't call these moves like super impactful. There's just been a lot of chatter. I
Yeah,
guess guys that like probably on like the fringe 53. We've had a lot of like backup quarterback news. We've had some this different stuff come up. Some interesting XFL signings. So
sir.
want to kind of and a interesting linebacker visiting the facility as well. So we'll get to all that stuff and as well kind of answer the questions as everybody kind of hopefully jumps in here for the stream. But just general thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about the backup quarterback stuff, man. Like what was your thoughts about first let's just go with Mason coming back and then
Mhm.
we'll hit on Mitch signing that 2-year extension.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought like we'd see some reshaping potentially of the quarterback room. So it's kind of funny that they're literally running it back with the same trio. Now
Hmm.
they have very much this going into the season defined roles as opposed to last year where
Right.
Kenny's the starter, Mitch is the backup, and Mason's the number three. So it's nice to have that clarity. It's also really nice to have that depth. I mean, I think you could do a lot worse from a backup standpoint with Mitch, and you could
Oh
do
yeah.
way worse from a QB3 standpoint than Mason. Mason coming back, I will say, like, I don't know. I've seen some things like he himself, he even made a podcast appearance, which is super rare for him. I actually think he said it was his first one where he was talking about the situation. And, if what he's saying is true, there were some other opportunities out there. He felt like the grass wasn't greener. Very comfortable here, knows the offense, knows the system, knows his teammates. So that opportunity probably was similar to the one that he got here. Just felt okay about taking a
Hmm.
QB3 position with the Steelers. And again, a guy that's, played in 17 games, made 10 starts as a QB3. I think you either go that route or you go like the super developmental route, like if Malik Willis were to become available. Those are the
Yeah.
two routes that you have for the QB3 spot. But totally cool with Mason coming back. I think that he's kind of answered a lot of questions in terms of like how he's going to accept his role. He's been nothing but a pro about it. So I got no qualms about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting, man, because like when I heard about Mason coming back, I was like, I'm. It's not that the question isn't whether or not like Mason is like worthy of being on like a 53-man roster. Like Mason's good enough. Like there's a lot of bad, like really bad quarterbacks in the
Yes.
league. There's
Yes.
just not a surplus of talented guys at that position. So, um, as it pertains to is Mason good enough to be like QB3? Like absolutely he is. He's probably better than like a decent amount of QB2s in the league. I think anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But just getting him back into the fold. I think that's a smart thing. I'm curious on what the contract looks like, just
Right.
because I didn't like how they kept him on the roster last year after the preseason. I understood it from, you got a young quarterback, you brought Trubisky in to be the starter. I just don't like from a roster construction standpoint. I don't like paying QB3s who are going to be inactive on game day like $3-4 million on the cap. Like
Well,
it's
that's the
not,
difference though with the
yeah, it's
roster
not
now, right? Though.
significant, but it's something. You know what I'm saying?
But I'm saying
What we
now,
saying?
like with dressing the three quarterbacks,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
that's the difference that within the NFL rule change and stuff to
Yeah.
me too. So yeah, but I definitely I see your point as far as last year and
Yeah.
definitely agree with it. Yeah.
And just like how much money do you want to dedicate towards a guy that like you're planning on never playing? Like even if like
Hmm.
Mason can definitely like keep you afloat, like I don't think he's going to kill you. I expect the same thing from him. I think he's going to go out there in preseason and play pretty well, and he'll probably dominate the third string guys, and then we'll
Hmm.
talk about like how he does that, just like he kind of did last year as well. But um,
It's obviously not even worth talking about at this point because
yeah,
it didn't happen. But
yeah.
like, if you were him, would you have looked at potentially an opportunity because you're seeing guys go there and then come back and get opportunities, going and being the starter in the XFL or something for a season?
Yeah, that question came up, I think, in one of the live streams we did like before the draft. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure,
okay.
like somebody asked that, and I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, that kind of might make sense just to get like live reps, like to get because that's the
Hmm.
thing, like, he obviously played well in the he obviously played well in the preseason last year, but it seemed like there was some potential teams maybe feeling around, kind of asking the Steelers if they would be willing to let him go, whether that before the season or during closer to the trade deadline. But that's a good point. I mean, I think in terms of like Mason and Mitch, man, like just getting like when you're a young quarterback in the league, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but you're a young quarterback in the league. You haven't seen everything, right? Like you're seeing different coverages at this level. Like everything's moving faster. So having guys, Mitch, I think has made 50 plus starts, and then Mason, he like you mentioned, he's appeared in like 17 games. He's made 10 starts. So having two guys already in the room that know how to watch film. They've seen different coverages. They've seen different schemes. So, like, that's a huge help to a young quarterback that's still trying to, like, learn how to process and learn how to, read defenses. So I think that's going to be huge. And then just from Mitch, his perspective, I was a little bit surprised that both of them came back. Or actually, I'm really surprised both of them came back. I'm not overly surprised that Mitch, I know some people were. I'm not overly surprised that Mitch wanted to take a backup job in Pittsburgh. Couple reasons why. One, Pickett's already had 2 concussions. So, like, he's probably, like and I'm not obviously definitely not, like, wishing this or anything like that, but it's worth discussing. Like, he's 1 concussion away from probably missing significant time. Like, that's just how those things roll. Like, you can only have so much of those before the recovery time starts to become longer. So, I think that and then, you're settling behind a young quarterback. Pickett didn't exactly light the world on fire. His job is very secure, but I think that there is some potential there. If he were to stumble, like, a year or 2 from now, like maybe Mitch is still in the same system. He has some familiarity with the guys, whatever. He could get a second chance here too. And I just don't think with the way that he's played in his previous 2 opportunities, the first 4 games with the Steelers, his last season with Chicago, I just don't think that there was going to be a team out there that was going to give him a shot to even open the year up as quarterback 1, you know what I'm saying, in front of a rookie.
Right. Like I look around and it's like, who could he have had that situation with? I mean, it's like Washington, maybe if they didn't get Brissett, Indy, if they didn't have Gardner Minshew, like there's some places where it's like, if they didn't already have an incumbent guy there to kind of be that Mitch Trubisky to what he was last year for Kenny, then potentially he could get some starts there. But yeah, there's not a landing spot around the league at this point that I look at and see that situation. Now, could there have been in a year or something like that? Maybe, but to your point, a lot of guys really covet the familiarity, and it's not like this is a bad situation. And like you said, he's one very unfortunate, hopefully it doesn't happen, bad hit away from seeing significant starts in Pittsburgh again.
Yeah, and in a decent situation. I think we talked about like all the upgrades that the Steelers have made on the offensive side of the ball. Getting Isaac Seumalo, I think that's going to be a big help, but also bringing in Allen Robinson. I think that the supporting cast for Kenny Pickett is a lot better than even what Trubisky walked into week 1 of last year. You know what I'm saying? So that's significant when you're talking about guys that are, potentially going to be looking for opportunities. I mean, if one comes his way, he's going to be set up, to succeed a little bit better than maybe even he was last year this time. So he said Mason's probably a better QB3 than most of the late round guys this draft.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that there's any doubt about that, at least next year. I think that there is a benefit, I think, to drafting a guy late as your QB3 for one cost, like because Mason's going to probably cost 2 to 3 times more than a guy like that would. Having said that, I also think it also doesn't get discussed as much. Like we always talk about like late addition type receivers, like trying to crack the 53-man roster. Well, those guys are getting reps with QB3s. So like if you don't have a competent QB3, or if that guy's sailing balls all over the field, he's just not giving guys good looks, then that hurts their chances to make the 53, hurts their development process as well. With Mason, like a lot of these guys that are going to be pushing for the 53-man roster, your Hakeem Butlers, your Calvin Austins, guys that are fighting for like backup spots, like them getting reps with Mason in the second or third string or whatever, like that's going to be good for them. Like Mason's going to make them look good, especially against second and third string defenders. So
did you see the tweet that I put out? It was like Mason going against threes in the preseason. It was that Mahomes clip, like one of the very first plays as a starter against the 49ers, where he just like creates a ton. Yeah, like it creates a ton and I don't know how many yards he ended up running because he went all the way to the left, came all the way back to the right, and then found somebody in the back of the end zone.
Right.
But yeah, he's gonna think about how these preseason games are about to go for the Steelers. with Mitch as the
It's
backup
gonna
and
be
Mason
fun.
as
It's
3.
gonna
Like,
be like legitimately fun. I feel like because I feel like the Steelers could like they should run the tape. Like there's just not very many teams that have like 3 like even like remotely competent quarterbacks. Like they should run the
mhm,
table in the preseason
yeah,
just because like I'm just imagining like Mason in the fourth quarter of these garbage time games, like throwing to Hakeem Butler and like guys like that. It's gonna be Miles Boykin. It's gonna be interesting. Like there's like legitimate talented players, I feel like, at least on offense. So I see you guys December. Yes, sir. My God, Donnie.
oh yes,
If you guys
sir.
are in the chat, please make sure that you drop a like.
You
Make
know
sure you
what is going to be
subscribe to both channels. What's up?
You know what is going to be fun though, actually, is their first preseason game is against the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers are going to have that whole Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask trying to
Oh, that
figure out
well,
who's.
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Uh, yeah, Baker. I cannot. That's another guy. I cannot believe he's getting another starting job. I can't believe he's getting a starting
you
opportunity
think he's
this
going to
week.
win that
So
job?
I don't know, man. It seems like it's really back and forth. Like depending on who you talk to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or who you listen to, I should say. I'm not really seeking out
Yeah,
conversations
I
with
mean,
Baker.
so this is just based off like I have a dynasty draft that's going on literally right now. And I was looking for like a potential 5th quarterback, and I was like
Hmm.
Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask were both there, and it's like you click on it, like they tend to believe that it's going to be Trask. It sounds like. I mean,
Yeah.
they
I'll
invested a
be
second
honest.
round
Like,
pick in him, and they keep talking about him.
do
Like,
you remember when Trask? Do you remember like the day before the draft, like in 2021, where like there was like that weird like
yes,
Trask like Steelers
hmm
rumor that floated
yep.
around? Dude, I was freaking out. I honestly I do not think Trask is very good.
No,
I didn't think he was that good in college. That I hope he succeeds. Good for him. I did not think that he was an
oddly
NFL
enough,
quarterback.
I mean, I don't think he's got the arm, but like inside the pocket and the way that he moves, it reminds me of Mason.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I remember
but
people
Mason's
saying
got a
that
better
too.
arm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting enough, but let's talk a little bit about Quan Alexander's visit. Of course, he probably like seeing that he left town without a
hmm
contract. That's usually a pretty bad omen. That he's probably not going to end up in Pittsburgh. But
Yeah.
what are your kind of thoughts on Quan? Maybe like the potential fit. Like, did you want to see him sign? What do you think?
Yeah, so 2 names that were floated out there recently with the Steelers were him and Kyle Van Noy.
Hmm.
Van Noy, just from a fit perspective, was thrown out there saying that he'd be one of the better fits for the Steelers. But he didn't actually visit, at least yet. Quan visiting, you look at what he did last year with the Jets, kind of a different role, limited role, played less than 600 snaps. Interestingly enough, played like 128-ish or something like that in the slot. So I think when you look at what the Steelers are kind of missing from that inside linebacker room, I think Cole Holcomb can cover a little bit. You're not asking him to go up the seam with a tight end or something like that.
Hmm.
But Quan Alexander would give you some of that coverage ability from that off-ball linebacker spot. So I would like him from that perspective. I think people forget how young he's. I mean, still just 28 years old because he
Yeah.
came in as a 21-year-old. So I think there still is something left in the tank. I thought he was better last year with the Jets than even the previous couple seasons. To your point about leaving town, I know that historically that is a bad omen when it comes to the Steelers, and it still could be. But I know from his side, he has an offer on the table right now from the Jets. That's at least what I was told. So there was no way that he was coming here and immediately signing a contract
Hmm.
regardless. I feel like he would probably make that clear to the Steelers. So, because I don't know that he visits here with knowing that there's no intention of him signing that day. And
Right.
the Steelers are just like, oh, sure, still just come here anyway. So I think that, there still is the door open for that to potentially happen. I don't know from a financial perspective where that's at. Doesn't seem like that would be something where the Steelers want to invest a lot of dollars, and it could be that I feel like the Jets are probably in a position to offer more monetarily. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Quan was a guy like back in the day when he signed that huge deal. I think it was San Francisco. I was like, man,
mhm.
that's a bad contract, and it just didn't work out in San Francisco. I know he got hurt towards ACL, but like I felt like man, like when I was watching, I combed through 2 games worth of tape, and from the beginning of the season last year, the Steelers game and the Dolphins game, and he was really good. Like I mean, it wasn't perfect or necessarily like 100% clean, but he was really really solid. I was really impressed with
Yeah.
his athleticism. The dude can really still run even despite all those injuries that he's kind of accrued over the course of his career, and You mentioned the coverage ability. I mean, there are some good reps in coverage, man. Like again, it wasn't
Yes.
perfect, but like probably better, definitely better than like a Landon Roberts is going to give you. Which his role is strictly as a thumper, but
Right.
I'm definitely on board with potentially bringing him in and adding him to the mix. It just I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to compete with the Jets offer. I mean, the Jets do have some other linebackers, of course, like C.J. Mosley making a ton of money still. I know
Mhm.
Quincy Williams. They brought him back on a nice size contract as well. He had a really good season last year. So are they going to be willing to pay like three linebackers second contract
Right.
money? I don't know, and I don't even
Yeah.
know like what Quan's after because I think his play, at least in the 2 games that I saw, and that's a really limited sample size, but in the 2 games that I saw, like warranted and a raise from what he was making, which was very little last year. Now, if we're talking about a 1 year, 3-4 million, like 2, 3, $4 million contract or something like that, I think Quan's probably worth that.
I
If we're
agree.
talking like long term, I think you get into some questions about like his health and longevity, and is he going to be able to stay healthy and all that stuff. So that to me is like if we're talking about a significant contract beyond like the 3-4 million mark, then I would really need to go back to the film and say like, all right, like is
What if
this
it
is
was
this a good idea?
what if it was something, you look at how they structured the cornerback contracts last year with
Last year, like with
Akello and
Akillo and Levi.
Levi getting those matching deals, like 2 years, 8, but it's really like, okay, if this guy is not
Yeah,
good after one, where, they can cut ties
yeah.
without anything. Yeah.
I would be fine with that. I think on the surface, that's fine, and it does keep the cap hit like relatively fine in year one. With Akillo, when they released him, they're gonna occur like a $1.5 million in dead cap, which is fine. It's not
Hmm.
gonna really hurt you that much. So, yeah, I definitely think that would have made more sense. I do want to ask you, Ronald, saying what's up, brother? Appreciate you tapping in with us. I do want to ask you a question. So with Quan, I know he's really the first name, I guess, that we've heard visited, like big name like that. Would you have rather, a guy like Quan Alexander, like inside linebacker type sign, or would you rather go get a veteran third edge rusher?
Tyler and I actually had this conversation, and that's why, like, I mean, I brought up the name briefly with Kyle Van Noy. I keep coming back to it just because of him being able to offer you both, like, be an off-ball guy, also give you something off the edge. Um, But even if you're just stripping away the names and just talking about the position, probably a third edge. I mean, I just think that those guys need breathers more often. TJ and Highsmith, we saw TJ miss the time that he did last year. I would rather go out and get a piece that we know is going to be able to contribute and play, 15, 20 snaps, whatever it might be, and give those guys a breather. And in the worst case scenario, in a pinch, be able to play as well in place of one of those two guys. Just
Yeah,
because, we saw they tried out Malik Reed, and I was on board with the move when they went and made that last year. That obviously didn't pan out. But, going back to that same, like, the idea, I can get on board with what they were trying to do and what they thought they were getting in Malik Reed. Because
yeah.
I mean, you look at Malik Reed, what he was doing in Denver, made a ton of sense why they thought he'd be a solid third edge here.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I agree with everything you're saying. I think ideally, a guy like Van Noy, I think that's why he makes so much sense to,
Yeah.
everybody talking about it. And I think that, having a guy that can do a little bit of both, the way Van Noy was deployed in Miami, the way he was deployed in New England, him being able to rush from different spots, blitz in your sub package formations and stuff like that. I think that all makes a lot of sense. It could help the Steelers if you get into a pinch, especially if Watt, goes down with an injury or something like that, or heaven forbid, Alex Highsmith goes down with an injury in a contract year. I think that's definitely worth talking about. I'm kind of split on it. I can see the argument for both sides. I think that Landon Roberts I liked the signing, but like he's a very, very, very specific player. Like you are
Yep.
going to want to play him like against teams that are going to be like really condensed and they're going to try to like go smash mouth football, kind of like what we've been used to seeing from Baltimore and Cleveland in the previous years, Carolina last year, like those types of games that are just going to try to like pound the rock down your throat.
That's what
Now
I'm about to say.
you
It's like
can't
he's a
you
fit in the AFC North in past years. Is it going to be the same this year?
Right, and, like, it doesn't seem like, at least from what I know about Todd Monken's offense, like, I don't think that Baltimore is gonna be structured like that anymore, and then, like, Cleveland, it also seems like Stefanski's, like, opened the door to them moving towards more, like, 11 personnel, and more, like, pistol, more gun, stuff like that, and not as much, like, under center stuff, with Nick Chubb being the focus of that offense, so, I definitely think Roberts has a role, and what they signed him for, like, 100% I'm down. It's just, like there are certain times and matchups where teams want to get real spread that he's just not going to be able to be on the field. And that's my question is like, if we get into a situation where, for example, you're playing a ton of, nickel or 3-3-5 or anything like that, where you're having to keep your linebackers on the field. Is Holcomb going to be good enough or consistent enough in coverage to take on those responsibilities? Because he's really the only guy on the team who has experience like in coverage that you're not just like, oh God, this is going to be a disaster. Mark Robinson, complete projection there. A Landon cannot, that's not his role. Yep. So it's like they're relying a lot on Cole Holcomb. I was kind of surprised that he got a 3-year deal, honestly, with the Steelers. Like, not that
they gotta feel super good about those medicals.
Huh?
Yeah. They gotta feel super good about the medicals.
You think? Were you surprised at the length of his deal? I was a little bit surprised when I saw 3 years, $18 million. Just personally, after seeing what the other guys on the market were getting.
Yeah. Yes,
like he's a fine player. Like he's a fine player.
I would say yes, with the caveat being like I think his last year healthy, like so his 2021, 100% would have warranted that deal. Yeah. So I think a lot of teams just were probably felt good about, because from what I understand, like the market for him was pretty solid. Yeah. So I think the Steelers were certainly a competitive market for him and felt they had to give him that 3rd year probably. Yeah, but his 2021, I think if he hits the market after that season as opposed to 2022, he's getting it. I mean, obviously at least what he did in this offseason, probably more. I really like him as long as he can stay healthy. If that foot checks out, I'm 100% on board with the 3 years on that.
Yeah, he's going to be I think he has the potential to be a solid starter here. I just was a little surprised at the length of the deal for sure. Yeah. Would you rather sign Alexander or give Highsmith his extension? To me, I don't think we're talking about the same type of ballparks financially there. I mean, I'm anti-drafting off-ball linebackers early in the draft. I'm anti-giving off-ball linebackers that are not named Fred Warner a ton of money in free agency. So to me, I'm out. Like if we're talking about Quan for over like 4, 5, 6, and I would really need to go back and do more film study than I've done to say that I'd even be comfortable with that type of market. But if we're talking about that, then we need to reevaluate. But in terms of like Alex Highsmith, man, like I've talked about this a lot over the course of the offseason. Like I don't see a scenario where Highsmith doesn't get like a huge bag. I mean,
his market value is listed as $13.9 million right now. That's if they get him at that. Yeah,
it's not realistic. I'm just telling you. It's just if you look at some of these edge rushers, man. Like I'm gonna pull up over the cap real quick.
And I agree with you, but like with the caveat being, what if he doesn't? Right. What if he's not looking to break the bank?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Like what if he wants to stay? Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, just with this like list, man, like I'm just looking and he's better than these players. Like, for example, let's just go down the list of guys that are making. These are like kind of some of these are recently signed contracts. Harold Landry, $17.5 million. Is Alex Highsmith better than Harold Landry? I would say as a pure pass rusher, yes. I know Landry does some unique stuff as like a spinner and with their stunts that they do in Tennessee. He's also coming off an injury. I think Highsmith's better than him. Chandler Jones, $17 million. I think that contract may be a little bit older, but definitely think he's better than him. Emmanuel Ogbah, that is a relatively new contract. I definitely think he's better than Emmanuel Ogbah.
Is that, Ogbah signed is that in Miami?
Yeah.
So they signed him to that deal and they have Chubb there.
Yeah, so like this is the other thing, right? Like there's some other deals that I think like you can get on board with. Like, all right, like he's similarly tiered players. Like Hassan Reddick, the Eagles stole him. I have no freaking clue what the NFL was doing. I said that when they signed 3 years, $45 million, $15 million a year. Like that was ridiculous. Trey Hendrickson making $15 million a year. Him and Highsmith are probably comparable rushers. I think maybe I think they are definitely different rushers. But like that's the absolute to me. Like 15 million is like the floor. And but then when I look at like some of these guys that have recently gotten paid, like Bradley Chubb, and I know like being a first round pick and the Dolphins trading all the draft capital they did for Chubb is going to play into this. But like Bradley Chubb's getting $22 million a year. Alex Highsmith has been better than him over the course of his career. So like what could that look like? Like what type of extension could that even look like? You know what I'm saying? Like what are you anticipating? I haven't heard anything on my end in terms of like them negotiating with him or anything like that. I don't know if they're waiting to training camp, but what's your expectations for a contract for him?
Yeah, I mean, it seems clear like the team Khan has openly talked about that being a priority for this offseason. If I'm gonna, let's make a prediction right now. I'm gonna say it gets done before they go to training camp. I do think they get an extension done, and I think that the number is going to be lower than what you're expecting. He is already to me the type of guy that isn't, chasing that money. I think he would rather be here on the opposite side of TJ for a few million less per season if it meant having to do that in order to stay here. I'm going to say he gets, about 15 a season, 15, 16 a season.
Hey, that's the question. Like people, because like he's really like if you look at the guys that they got free agency for next year, like he is their free agency for next year. There's not really anybody else that like I'm super concerned about in terms of him. Them having to prioritize other guys. Like it's just Highsmith. If he's the number one priority right now and will be by the time they hit free agency next year. $15 million for me, this is just my opinion, is stealing. Like I legitimately think he's worth more than that. I would 110% like durable, productive, has had success, with TJ. I still think he's potentially, I mean, he could even get a little bit better, like, because right now, like he's still only a speed rusher. Like he has a couple of really defined moves and he has a nice spin counter, but like, I still think like he could get a little bit better. So, yeah, I'm all on board. I think the discussion really is centered around, for me, I think, with how smart is it to potentially pay two edge rushers, $45-50 million per year on the cap between him and Watt. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that you could probably make a discussion or an argument either way in that regard, but I'm just like, I'm team, like we found an edge rusher in the third round of the draft, which is really difficult to do. Like all of the really good pass rushers in the NFL, for the most part, on the edge are like first round picks. Like it's very difficult to find guys in the third round that are at this level. I would 100% want to keep them together. It's just a matter of like, what's it going to cost?
Can I tell you? So the way I'm viewing it, and maybe this is really stupid, it's just the way that I'm viewing it. I'm kind of grouping that entire defensive line together and saying, okay, by the time they can structure it, maybe this way too, where it's like when Cam's off the books, then you have TJ and Alex as the big, money makers along that defensive line. That's just kind of how I viewed it.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Because all in all, it's just the amount of money that you're investing in the trenches, right? So I think that potentially makes sense. I don't know. I'm sure that's going to be a hot topic over the course of the next couple months. I'm sure that when we get to training camp and stuff, we're gonna be on Alex Highsmith watch like every day. Like, is he there? Like,
it's gonna be like remember like with Deontay before he signed his extension, his agent was there like 2 days prior, and everyone was like, okay, well, it's about to come. Do we just go wait out this week?
Yeah. I think that's definitely an interesting discussion point. It's going to be the number one story, I feel like, at training camp this year, because there's no, like, Kenny Pickett's the established guy. Like it's going to be definitely different in that regard. But let's see.
I've just been looking at some of these comments that have come in, but we're pretty high up there. Thanks.
Opposite TJ affect his value for other teams though? I mean,
I'll just bring up the fact that, like, look at the deal Bud Dupree still got when he hit free agency coming off a torn ACL in Tennessee.
Yeah. Here's the deal, man. I don't really think that it. I know that, and I'm not saying you are, brother, by any means. I know that some people think that, like, his production's like severely inflated because of who he plays across from. I'm just saying, like, guys that win one-on-one on the edge, like in pass rushing situations, like Highsmith does at that rate, are extremely valuable. It doesn't really like it matters to an extent, but also you also have to. I feel like this also conveniently gets left out. Like a lot of teams invest more money or like higher draft capital in their left tackles, and Highsmith goes against the left tackle. Like, and I do think that there are more right tackles in today's game than people realize that are probably the better of the two tackles on offense, but. He's still going up against like really good competition. Like you look at what like Jonah Williams has been a solid to above average or good left tackle in the NFL, and like Highsmith has whooped him. Like he stole something. It was like embarrassing what he did to him last year, and I still think that Highsmith, even if he's a top 20 edge rusher in the league, I mean he's still extremely valuable, not just from an NFL perspective, but for the Steelers too, whose really defense revolves around the 3-4 outside linebackers getting pressure consistently off the edge. So.
I mean, look at how different their defense looks when they aren't getting to the quarterback. I mean, it's just it's them prioritizing in the pass rush, and that's why they haven't really put those resources into the back end that they have.
Yeah, totally agree. Appreciate all you guys jumping in here. We're going to be on for a little bit longer. If you guys have any other questions, please drop those in the chat, and we'll try to get to as much as we possibly can. Please hit that like button. Make sure all you guys are subscribed to both mine and Smitty's channels. We appreciate you guys' support. Let's talk
on around the 412 right now, actually, but yeah, still.
Oh, you are you?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. And the around 412 channel. So 3 channels. Let's talk a little bit about Hakeem Butler.
Yes.
Like what do you think about the signing? I see like people are like getting all upset. Like people are saying that he's getting too much hype, not enough hype. Like what do you think about Hakeem Butler?
Well, I mean, I how could you be upset about it? Like it's not.
That's my point. I don't get how you're upset.
I guess, but yeah, I mean, if you remember, this guy had a huge. I mean, I know you remember. I'm talking to the other people here. This guy had a huge hype train coming out in 2019. Like he was some people's top receiver in that class just because of his size. I mean, you go back and watch some of his games, maybe the most fun wide receiver to watch from that class, just because he had the size advantage over literally every single corner that he would go against and just looked like a bully out there. You did, his game against, who was that one against where he had almost 200 yards?
Wazoo.
Yeah. Just a ridiculous performance. But I mean, you don't find guys like they don't grow on trees, that big bodied receiver that has that catch radius that he does, that can get his hands away from his frame the way that he does and pluck the ball out of the air. I mean, it's a shot worth taking. And from what I know, there's at least 2 or 3 other teams that were also trying to sign him to their roster. If you were wondering why he wasn't, part of that rookie mini camp at all, is because he had 2 or 3 other teams trying to sign him to their rosters as well. So I think, it's an interesting signing. He's definitely going to be a fun guy to watch throughout training camp and in the preseason. I think he's got a good shot to make the 53 though, for sure. Just for the reason that I said, I don't think he's signing with the Steelers over the 2 or 3 other teams that I've heard he had interest from. If he didn't feel good about his chances of making this 53. So I'm excited about it. I think it's, huge for the red zone, especially. But third down situations, red zone, I think this guy could be, really something for this offense.
That was the thing, man. The frame and how he moves for his frame is definitely different. Like he has a really good ability to, sink his hips and drop his weight, cut, like especially on those end breakers, man. You get him working over the middle of the field, that intermediate area. It's like being cautiously optimistic or just trying to will something together. But I'm just trying to think about like all of the pieces that the Steelers have brought in on offense. Allen Robinson probably being the biggest one, but then you look at Darnell Washington, and then you look at Hakeem Butler. And I just think that like the Steelers, I'm hoping, understand that they have to be able to access the middle of the field. Like however they're going to do that. And if they deem the best way to do that is with all these big bodied, big catch radius receivers, then I'm 100% on board. Like, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? So, and that was the thing with Butler, like you mentioned, like the ability to, pluck the ball out of the air away from his frame. And, when he gets guys on his back and crosses their face, like, it's not like you're going to be able to get through him or to even get to his hands. Like the dude has like freaking ginormous size. He's got like a 99th percentile wingspan. I mean, he's fantastic in that area.
I can't wait to watch him and Porter go one-on-one.
I know the Steelers have all these like Decepticons on the outside with all these long corners. You mentioned Porter. We got Trice, Hakeem Butler, Allen Robinson,
I mean, even
George
the other
Pickens.
This old guy that got Luke Bartu is like, he's only 6'1", but he's super long for 6'1". Like,
I know somebody was asking me. I had two people on the channel comment and ask about a film room for him. So I need to. That's one of the things I'm going to look for when I get back from vacation to see if I
Did
could
you did
scrounge
you
up some
when
stuff.
when he came out? Did you watch him at San Diego State at all, or
No,
no?
no,
Okay,
didn't watch him. So did he get drafted?
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe, or for some reason I thought he was a sixth round guy.
Okay. Yeah. No, I didn't. Unfortunately, because when they signed him, like somebody was one of my buddies was
No,
hitting
no,
me
he
up
went
about him.
undrafted to the Jags. I thought he was a
Undrafted.
sixth rounder by then. I knew it was with the
Okay.
Jags, but
Yeah. I don't know. When's the last time he's played in the NFL?
last year
Oh,
he was
really?
on a couple he was on a couple practice squads. In a
Okay.
game, he played with the Cardinals in 2021. But yeah, he's been on a lot of practice squads. Jags, Cardinals, Niners, Chiefs, Jets before the Steelers.
Yeah.
So still just 24 years old. He's made his
Just
rounds already.
hanging around, man. Hanging
Yeah.
around. Let's go quickly to these couple. Another defensive lineman in top 2 rounds next season. Potentially. I mean, I think Hayward, if depending on what he looks like this year, is he able to fend off Father Time for another year and stay extremely productive? And if he does, he's probably going to see the last year of that contract. I think he's got 2 years left on his deal, right? So,
Yeah.
Potentially another defensive lineman. We'll see on what DeMarvin Leal and some
And
of
what
those other
about,
young
what
guys
if
look
what
like.
if Larry Ogunjobi even in year one of that contract doesn't live up to
Right.
it?
Or isn't healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that makes some level of sense for sure. Chances Teague makes the final 53.
I hope you didn't bet on it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to me. Who do you think is the front runner right now for like RB3 though?
I'll be honest. I
Because that was my
started.
thing when I saw the question was like, I don't think he's gonna make it, but like at the same time, like who is? Is it McFarland?
I mean, it could be. I think I honestly would probably go with Heat having a better shot over McFarland.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, man. That what is it? Alfonso, that HBCU kid.
Mm-hmm.
He looked pretty impressive. I dove into him after I saw that the Steelers signed him. He's got a couple games where he obviously pops up. I mean, level of competition is obviously going to be a question,
Sure.
but I mean, he's got juice for sure. So he'll
That's
be interesting to watch. And I also feel like he kind of offers like a storyline that Tomlin seems to chase every now and then. Like if you got a chance to reward a guy like that. So I don't know. I would keep my eye on him too, because it is like, after Najee and Warren, it is kind of open.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely interesting. I will say this, and maybe this is how I should, well, in the back of my head, I kind of did know. But maybe this is how I should have known that the Steelers were going to not have the greatest inside linebacker situation last year. Because when I was at training camp, those 2 days in Latrobe covering with all Steelers, McFarland was cooking Miles Jack and Devin Bush. And I mean, like, absolutely frying. Like, and obviously, like, one-on-ones, like, they're designated offensive reps. Like, you expect those guys to win. But, like, when I tell you that McFarland was winning over and over and over, like,
I think I remember seeing you tweet about that.
Yeah, they could not cover him. So, like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think, special
that's the
teams
thing.
is obviously
It's what are they
the
looking
thing
for?
It's special teams. It's right. I mean, that's gotta, and also like somebody brought up, I can't remember where I saw it about Connor Hayward. Like, I mean,
someone said about having two, because they draft or signed that fullback out of
Yeah.
Iowa. So if they were to dress both of them, maybe you don't even necessarily have an RB3.
Right. Yeah, I think Hayward, I hope, is going to transition into like a H-back, like move.
What did you
fullback
see?
type.
I saw people talk about it on Twitter this week. He wasn't in that picture with the tight
Yeah.
end room that they put up.
Yeah,
and
I saw that
everyone,
too.
so that got everyone's mind going like, oh, okay, well, is
Mhm.
Hayward not even in those meetings and stuff? So
I think it's a better fit, to be honest with you. I really do. I think he's like more of like a fullback, like move guy than he is like a traditional tight end. And like,
I
and that
agree.
doesn't
I
mean
also
you can't
just
like flex him out to the
Right.
slot. Like you could come out.
Yeah, just use
Go
him
ahead.
the best way to. Though I was going to say, like, just use him the best. I mean, it sounds stupid, but like, just the best visibility. Move him around. Like, I don't care what you want
Yeah.
to label him as. It doesn't really
Sure.
matter what he's labeled as. Just
Yeah. And I think he's a better blocker, at least from the tape that I saw at Michigan State. Like, he's a better blocker coming out of the backfield than he is, like, in line.
Oh,
Like,
sure. Yeah.
just because, I mean, the size, like, he doesn't have the necessary size to, like, play in
Mhm.
line and, like, down block on defensive ends. Like, it's just a really tough, almost nearly impossible ask for him. But I do think, like, you can really do some creative stuff. Like, if you think about it next year, the Steelers could come out and, let's just say you got two backs, and then a guy like Darnell Washington or Pat Fryermuth, or say you put them both on the field and then put Deontay Johnson. I know taking George Pickens off isn't great, but like you can get defenses in, heavy personnel and then spread everybody out and go empty. You know what I'm saying? And then like Connor Hayward, like I think he's good enough to beat linebackers. I think Darnell Washington is good enough to beat linebackers. If I can scheme up, my number one thing that I want to see from Canada is like I want to see him be very intentional about getting Pat Fryermuth matched up on safeties. Like get him advantageous
Yes.
matchups, and he's gonna eat, man. Like I think that they can go big next year and still be really good in the passing game. And I think like you saw, like a team that did this last year was Kansas City. Like Kansas City used a ton of 13 personnel, a ton of 3 tight end looks, and they just ate. Mahomes ate off of that. So I'm interested to see if that's kind of in the cards. For
Yeah.
the Steelers.
I mean, that's almost like what I said. I was so glad that they got Washington because he finally got a tight end that can play in line.
Mhm.
But it lets Pat basically become a slot receiver for you, which is essentially what
What he
he
does
is.
best.
You can call him a tight end, but he's a slot weapon. So I'm very interested to see what the packages look like. But that's a great point in terms of the utilization of getting those guys on the field. If you're not getting him those matches with safeties in the slot, you're using Freiermuth the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like someone brought up to
Agree.
me that he had like the 5th highest pass blocking grade for tight ends or something like that because I said he wasn't a good inline blocker. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Who cares?
I do not care how good he is at pass blocking because he shouldn't be pass blocking.
Yeah. Who cares? A couple questions about Nick Herbig. Yeah, I mean, I think that Herbig has a chance, man, of being edge 3. I mean, if they don't bring in a veteran, I mean, he's probably got the leg up. He has the draft capital associated with him. I did a video on Herbig already on my channel, but I do think that the first step, man, is absolutely legit. Like he's explosive off the line of scrimmage, can really turn the corner, he can bend. I think he's got some good hand usage to get free at the apex. I think the counters that I saw in the game or two that I watched were pretty solid. I just don't know. He's not long. Like he just doesn't have a lot of power to him. And I'm curious on how that's gonna play at the next level in terms of like not just
Right.
stopping the run, but if he's gonna be able to develop into a more well-rounded pass rusher. What are your thoughts on Herbie? What are your expectations for him?
I think that's, what you're saying as far as concerns is why people are projecting him to end up being an off-ball guy. It's just, I wish we had some tape there because even like my boy, and I know Tyler Wise is your guy too, was talking about this too. It's like an interesting situation when you look at him and like look at a Lawrence Timmons coming out of Florida State, who was kind of like that tweener too, where everyone was like, oh, this guy's gonna play off ball in the NFL. But like, at least we had some reps of him doing that in college. And like he also had a little bit longer arms than Herbig too. It's really tough to project what Herbig is going to be. All I can go really is off the comments and them not bringing anybody else to say that, yeah, it looks like he probably is going to be their third edge rusher right now. I think as time moves on, though, we're going to see him do both and probably realize that he's better suited to play off ball.
Yeah. And that's gonna be a transition too. Like you think about like training like off
Yeah.
ball linebackers, man, like your eyes are everything. And like training his eyes on the fly at this level with everything moving faster is going to be difficult. Like it's just not a transition that you see a lot of people that are really able to make. One or two more questions here. This one: who's your Steelers starting offensive line if week 1 starts tomorrow? I'm going to say Broderick Jones.
I mean, that's the one question, right? It's
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
really there's
Seumalo,
questions to ask you. Is it going to
Cole
be Broderick
Daniels,
Jones or Jalen
Chooks. Do you see it like that?
Moore? Yes, I do. I think the one interesting part about this is it's because it's the Steelers and not somebody else. It's like every other team, if they take Broderick Jones, they trade up to get a guy in the first round. You can 100% say with certainty that guy's starting at tackle. They're just going to let him take his lumps. But because it's Tomlin, there's like a little piece of me in the back of my mind that's like, if we get through the preseason, and especially because this person's asking if there's a game tomorrow, and we saw the way that like the quarterbacks were handled, that is like, man, if he feels like Dan Moore, at least to start, gives them the best chance of not killing you at left tackle,
Or Kenny Pickett.
yeah, or Kenny Pickett, that it could be Dan Moore. But I mean, I still feel like time, by the time we go through this process through training camp and stuff like that, that Broderick Jones is going to win the job.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm optimistic that that's the result. I definitely don't think that it's the foregone conclusion that like maybe everyone hopes slash thinks it's going to be. But I would 100%, um, you know, like for that to happen, even if it does involve him, taking his lumps,
yeah,
especially early
it's
on.
like the
So
Evan Neal, like Andrew Thomas. You
yeah,
look at year 1 and year 2 with the Giants. Like
hmm
these guys, they got to take their lumps sometimes,
yeah,
and that's
it's a
why
difficult transition.
I keep talking with Steelers fans. Like, there's probably going to be a lot of Steelers fans immediately that turn on Broderick Jones in year 1,
Yeah,
and
totally
that
agree.
is what it is. That's the life of being a tackle in the NFL.
Totally agree. What position group do you feel not the most comfortable with heading into next
Slot
season?
corner.
Yeah, that's easy question. we both answered that one like a lot. So yeah,
I don't get it. Like, is
I
there
don't know.
that much faith in Chandon Sullivan? Is what Patrick Peterson said about moving around, including him playing in the slot where he has like 20 snaps over the last 2 years for Minnesota? Like, it's hard to imagine that Chandon Sullivan is where they're putting all their chips. But uh, what else can we sit here and say right now? Like, you get rid of
Yeah,
Millette, who obviously wasn't going to give you anything in coverage really anyways. He was just that nice piece to have to feel like to fill that run portion blitzing aspect that you had in Mike Hilton. But from a coverage standpoint, he wasn't giving you nothing. But you look at Chandon Sullivan, and most yards allowed in the slot last season on a really bad Minnesota defense. They saw something there, obviously. I don't know. Is it KZ and then it's like Neal is the second safety in those sets? I don't know what the plan is. I can't figure it
yeah.
out.
I would love for somebody to break it down to me. I've thought about all the
I want
different
to get
options.
Terrell Austin in the live right now.
Yeah, I've thought about all those options that you just brought up too, man. Like it's
Yeah.
going to be fascinating. Like I think that the first time that we get to see them in camp, really work on this stuff, like it's going to be very, very interesting
Oh,
to see like
you know how like when
the
when
different
those
combinations.
beat reporters put out who the first guy
It's
is taking those snaps, oh, Twitter's
yeah,
going to be going wild. It's going to be
going
a great
nuts.
day.
Yeah, for sure.
Easiest content those beat reporters will get.
Yeah, no, 100%. Steelers and Packers would 100% be the teams that give Broderick time. Yeah. Yeah, some teams just have, longer leashes and they want,
Yeah.
they want to make sure that their guys are like physically and mentally ready for that type of leap before they, just go throwing them into the fire. So I think there's benefits to both. I do think that I am always on the train of like, you get better by playing, but at the same time, like, you can tell if a guy's not ready. Like in preseason, like you can tell if a guy's just not ready and he's not close to being ready. And then there are disadvantages too to throwing them out there. And not saying that this will happen with Broderick. Hopefully it doesn't. But there are some disadvantages to putting guys out there week 1, especially young players who have probably never had their butt kicked like this. And
Yeah.
you go out there in the first month of the season, you give up 3, 4, 5 sacks, and that's more sacks than you probably given up in the last
Yeah.
5 years of your career, football playing career. It's just tough. So, it's a big jump in competition. I'm interested to see how he does. But like I said, I agree with what you said. With people saying, or you telling people that they may turn on Broderick, early because he struggles, and I definitely agree. I mean, I think that that's probably going to happen, and then me and you are going to be on, Twitter telling everybody like, look, this is an investment that's going to be good for them in 2 to 3 years. Like you've just got to ride the wave, just ride the wave.
He's going to be better down the line because of taking these lumps early.
Yeah. On. Yeah. And I definitely agree with that. But, I appreciate all of you guys jumping in with us. Smitty, I appreciate you hopping on the live stream with me, brother. I am leaving for vacation here in a couple of hours. So I have some pre-recorded stuff for the channel that I'm going to get to you guys, hopefully. But it's just going to be a matter of like technical difficulties or me being able to get that set up away from the crib. But I appreciate all you guys jumping in. Please make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, Zach's channels as well. Zach, you want to shout those out or you want to put those in the chat? I just don't know the exact.
If you search Zachary Smith PGH would be my personal, and then just around the 412, and that's on literally everything. It's just that simple, around the 412. But yeah,
Sounds
appreciate
good.
it.
Yep, sounds good. Y'all make sure throw Zach a follow. Throw him a follow on Twitter as well. I will be back. Like I said, I'll have some stuff next week, but it'll be like shorter type videos. One of which I just recorded before we hopped on here. I'm excited about that one. I think you guys are going to like that one a lot. But I will catch you guys when I get back from Disney World. Appreciate you guys. Peace.